Hi, everyone. My name is Kirsten Jansen, and I'm happy to welcome you all to the Osterville Village Library on this gorgeous Saturday. And to our friends on Zoom, thank you so much for joining us as well. Today, we are excited to have with us John and Lee Towns from the Barnstable Association for Recreational Shellfishing. A little backstory on John and Lee before we get started. Lee and John retired in 2017 and moved to their home in Katuitt. They were interested in shellfishing and soon discovered BARS, the Barnstable Association for Recreational Shellfishing. Soon after, they took the aquafarming course at the Cape Cod Cooperative Extension in Barnstable, where they learned about what it takes to grow, manage, harvest, and market shellfishing. They also learned about their life cycles, their predators and diseases, and also the basics of running an aquafarming business. They remain active in BARS to this day. John is the current president and Lee is his secretary. Lee is also the Barnstable Land Trust Board President, and John is the past president of the Osterville Men's Club. Without further ado, Lee and John Towns with Recreational Shellfishing.
Thank you very much. All right, so as was stated, we were very interested in learning more about shellfishing, and we knew that shellfishing was quite a big deal here in Barnstable. Now, over to the left, and I'm not sure if they can see it on the Zoom call, but there's some of the equipment that we use, two different kinds of rakes and a basket. So you get a license, and the license for a senior citizen, well, for a regular license, I believe it's $60, but for a senior citizen, it's $40, and it's probably the best deal you could ever get. Because virtually every week of the year, you could get a full pack, which is the basket here. Well, I'm not sure if it's going to follow me. But this is a peck basket. The peck basket holds about 60 quahogs, depending on the size, and there are various sizes of the quahogs. And this is a long handle rake. It'll be on one of the movies later in the presentation. But this is it has tines that you dig down into the sand, and then when you feel like you've got something in them, sorry, work it out here. You just flip it over, and then you bring it up and you shake out the sand that's maybe in there or anything else, and you see if you've got quahogs. You might have rocks too, you know, but hopefully you get quahogs. And this is a soft shell clam rake. It's a totally different thing, and it's a different technique. You don't go directly down on the quahogs. You go away from them, you go down to about the length of the tine, and you pull away, and then you start digging sideways to try to find the soft shell clam. And the reason for that is soft shell clams are very, very soft and they're easily crushed. And you may not have a legal one of legal size. So for propagation efforts, it's important to keep the young shellfish alive so that they can grow and you can harvest them at a later time. Now, when you get your shellfish license, you can get a gauge. It's a 3-point gauge. It's 1 inch for a quahog, 3 inches long for oysters, and 2 inches wide for soft shells. All right. So that's pretty much it. And this is another important piece of equipment. It's a rescue whistle. I'm not going to blow it because it's rather shrill. And but the bottoms of our estuaries out here, a lot of places it's very, very muddy, and it's very easy to get stuck in the mud, literally. And you can also lose your balance and go over. So this is a good thing, especially in cold weather when you're maybe going for oysters. It's because you have waders on, your waders fill with water, even if you have a belt on, you could get in trouble pretty quickly. So you should always go with a buddy, and this is a good idea. So to start off, this is a picture of an oyster reef. And oyster reefs used to be very common all up and down the east coast of, and down into the Gulf of Mexico, down to Texas and over to Mexico. Now, the oyster, okay, what is the scientific name is Cressostraea virginica. It's the same oyster all up and down the east coast. There's only one variety, but they taste different. Now, you may be familiar with the term terroir. The French coined that for their wines because the same grape grows and differently and it tastes differently from the ground that it is grown on. So it's very much the same thing with oysters. All right, so it's the American or Eastern oyster. There's a Western oyster too, a Japanese oyster, but for the most part here, there's really one. It's a simple mollusk. It has 20 chromosomes, and that makes it a diploid. And I'll get into the diploid stuff a little bit later, but they are a tasty treat for not just humans, but other predators, crabs, mollusks, whelks, and birds. But they do help clean the ocean's waters, which is really something that's rather unique about them. But they're also a very important part of the blue economy, which is the economy that of aqua farming or fishing out in the oceans. But it's also and it's threatened. Let's just say it's threatened. And I may say it again later, but if the town of Barnstable has a tremendous shellfish propagation program for both quahogs and oysters, and if they didn't continue that, then it's my firm belief that we would not have oysters or quahogs out in the wild in Barnstable waters because there's so much pressure, primarily from humans. But thankfully we're okay.
I'll need you to log in.
Pardon?
I'll need you to log in.
No.
That's right.
Okay, I hope that the people on, if you can see the TV that's over to the left, please, full screen, the green.
Years, oyster stocks have declined due to overfishing and pollution. So today, 95% of the oysters we are versatile shellfish. You can bake them, boil them, smoke them, or eat them raw right from the shell. Over the years, wild oyster stocks have declined due to overfishing and pollution. So today, 95% of the oysters we consume come from oyster farms. Oysters are filter feeders, meaning they draw seawater over their gills to trap and eat the phytoplankton, microscopic aquatic organisms. An adult oyster can filter up to 5 liters of seawater per hour. Oyster farms are located in or by the sea because the oysters need to feed off seawater to survive. The hatchery keeps the oysters in upwellers, mesh-bottom buckets sitting in seawater. Oysters can reproduce once they're 6 months old. However, the ideal breeding age is between 2 and 10 years. At breeding time, workers put the oysters into breeding trays, oscillating the water temperature between 20 and 30 degrees to stimulate spawning. The females squirt out eggs, the males squirt out semen, and 16 hours later, the fertilized eggs hatch larvae. Right from birth, the oysters feed on a blend of the phytoplankton they'd eat in the wild. The hatchery dilutes this plankton mix in seawater and pumps it to the oyster containers. Marine biologists manage the ponds in which the hatchery grows its phytoplankton supply. The larvae are so tiny you can't see them in the water. They're visible only under a microscope. Right from the time they hatch, they already have a shell and can swim. By about the 2-week mark, they've grown to the size of a speck. about a third of a millimeter long. However, now they act like miniature adults and stay put. The hatchery keeps them in suspension in circulating water, so they have an ample supply of food and oxygen. As they grow, they're transferred to progressively larger bottles. By the time they're 4 to 6 weeks old, they're ready to leave the hatchery and move to the oyster farm. The farm floats in a harbor. The baby oysters arriving are at least a millimeter long. They go into upwellers. Pipes circulate seawater, and the babies filter feed on the natural phytoplankton. Over the next 6 weeks or so, they quadruple in size to about 4 millimeters in length. Workers then pack them in plastic mesh bags, stack the bags on metal racks, and suspend the racks in the sea. The oysters live like that for 3 months, getting transferred into progressively larger mesh bags as they grow. Halfway into it, the oysters are this big, about 20 millimeters long. By the end of the 3 months, they're double this size, grown up enough to leave home and venture out into the real world. Workers lay them on the seafloor and leave them for 6 months to reach harvest size, which is determined not by length anymore, but by weight, 80 grams. To finally harvest the oysters, they lower a custom-built machine that's part dredger, part conveyor. It generates jets of water which blow the oysters off the seabed onto the conveyor. They travel up, out of the water, into the boat. That conveyor dumps the oysters onto another conveyor, which leads to the picking station. There, workers select the correct size oysters and put them into baskets. Whatever they leave on the conveyor, smaller oysters, rocks, and such, continues to the end and drops back into the water. Of course, the harvesting machine misses some 80-gram oysters. Those remain on the seabed, sometimes for years, growing larger, like this guy, weighing about 1 kilogram. Prior to sale, the harvested oysters go through a cleaning process called depuration. For 42 hours, they sit in tanks filled with seawater sterilized by ultraviolet light. The oysters draw this clean water through their gills. This flushes out all the bacteria. Thanks to this depuration process, it's safe to eat raw oysters. It's taken a good 18 months to grow from microscopic organism to dining delicacy, which has a refrigerated shelf life of about a week.
Okay. So, we're really fortunate here in Barnstable, because it's such a rich and fertile area for shellfishing. And there are a lot of resources here. There is an upweller that's available to be seen in the public. The Barnstable Clean Water Coalition has this established. That's an upweller that's behind the Cape Cod Maritime Museum in Hyannis. It's right on the water. It's right behind their building and their parking lot in back. So you can go there whenever there's one of the we call them BICWIC, the Barnstable Clean Water Coalition, though. One of their assistants are there, and they'll open up. They have to go there and clean them every day, and then they're also sorting them. So it's a rather interesting thing. Now, this isn't going to. Yeah, you want to try that one?
Is this a movie?
Yeah, it is. Oh, sorry. So, as shown in the film, and that was taken off of YouTube, and it was actually an oyster farm in England. And much of the process is the same, with the way that they're created, if you will, in the lab, and then how they're fed and how they're nursed and nurtured along in the upwellers and all. But I've shown this to several of my aqua farming, friends. And, they all covered that, conveyor belt with the pump. It's so working, we get it's specially made, whatever, but nobody, that is not typical of how oysters are harvested here in, on Cape Cod. I'm not aware of anybody that has any kind of gear like that. But here you see, this is a 5-gallon bucket, and that's what you would see in the upweller. That on the left side, there are 60,000 oysters that are just 2 weeks old. And at that point, they're still called seed. And on the right, you can see that 2.5 months old. Probably the 60,000 oysters would be in about 6 or 8 different buckets. So they need space to grow, but that's part of the process of keeping them clean and also sorted out. And so it does take about 15 months from when they're put into the upweller for them to get the legal size. And then the Department of Natural Resources here in Barnstable, they had them tested at Rutgers University Laboratory. And this is one of the first batches that they did. This was taken in 2019. So the main threat really to oysters is overfishing. I'll get back. But predators, overfishing, and some diseases like DMS and dermal, MSX and dermal, sorry. And those diseases are not harmful to humans, but they can kill the baby oysters. So you can help this, by getting your license and becoming an active shellfisher. You can also volunteer. You don't have to be a BARS member, but you can volunteer for the seeding and not with the oysters, but with the quahogs. And Lee will talk a little bit about that later, I think. So, the Department of Natural Resources and BARS, also the Association of Reserve Cape Cod and Barnstable Clean Water Coalition, they doing a lot. So what I want to do is introduce a couple of scientists that invented the triploid oyster, and you'll find out why.
The great oyster grounds of the Chesapeake.
It's
Wiped out by overfishing, by 2 deadly diseases.
That's the sound of a dead oyster. That's the hollow side. Well, you can actually see that hollow shell in here if you look, but you can also hear it. It sounds like castanets. Both diseases, MSX disease and dermal, they're here to stay.
Dan Allen is a biologist, an old-fashioned bucket biologist, who believes he can beat both these killer diseases. He's been on the job for 12 years now. But MSX and derma have been here for more than 50 years. They have a head start. But Stan has a plan.
We really have to change the nature of the wild oyster to be more disease resistant.
Stan's plan goes like this: build a better oyster for the bay. And do it before time runs out.
Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, New York, Pennsylvania, Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Alabama, Oklahoma, and California. California.
Oysters from the Chesapeake went everywhere in America. The great shucking houses of Maryland and Virginia used to ship Chesapeake oysters all across the country. But the best oyster shuckers are nearly gone now. Only a few shucking houses are still working, and most of the oysters they shuck these days don't come from the Chesapeake anymore. They are shipped here for shucking from other states, most of them from Gulf states like Louisiana, where an oil spill has closed many oyster farms.
Something major needs to be done. We're trying to hold on to something that we're hoping that's gonna come back.
Allen begins with the best oysters. Stan's plan, pick out the big, fast-growing oysters. These oysters grew here on the tidal flats, where MSX and Dermo were killing many oysters, but not these oysters. They carry in their chromosomes some of the keys to beating disease. Traits that keep them growing fast while other oysters are dying off. Capture those traits in a hatchery. Allen uses strip spawning. Scrape out sperm from male oysters, then eggs for females.
Now I've got basically a pure suspension of eggs without any tissue or any other junk. And furthermore, I'll just add sperm to this to make the cross, and it'll be done.
By adding sperm from the best males with eggs for the best females, Allen is speeding up nature, passing on traits from one generation to the next.
Essential piece of scientific apparatus, French invention.
By mixing them together, Allen can breed a new generation of baby oysters. They will grow faster than their parents did, giving them a better chance of defeating disease.
Doing selective breeding, it's a sort of a slow, plodding methodology. But it's clear that oysters can be domesticated to become more disease resistant.
Without a new oyster for the Chesapeake, oysters from other states will have to be shipped in for shucking in Maryland and Virginia. An expensive proposition.
The millions of dollars that are lost in revenue in these two states, it's unbelievable. My hope was to raise our own oysters and be able to shuck our own oysters off of our own private beds. We need a change. What that change needs to be, we're leaving it up to the scientists.
Part two stands plan. Bring an invented oyster into the Chesapeake. An oyster he first introduced from the West Coast more than 20 years ago. The new oyster Allen invented was a triploid. An oyster packed with extra chromosomes.
In lower animals and invertebrates, it's possible to manipulate the number of chromosome sets that animals have. Almost all sexually reproducing animals are diploid. They have 2 sets of chromosomes.
Nature's oysters are diploids with 2 sets of 10 chromosomes that add up to 20 chromosomes in all.
We can actually produce oysters that have 3 sets of chromosomes.
Dan Allen's oysters are triploids with 3 sets of 10 chromosomes, adding up to 30 chromosomes in all. With extra chromosomes, these triploid oysters grow extra fast. The last step in Stan's plan. Try triploids in the Chesapeake. Using native triploid oysters. Planted by local oyster farmers.
We've been planting seed oysters in this river. When you plant oysters, it's like gambling all the time. Especially now. Since the mid-80s, the oysters have really started to decline. We have the wonderful oyster bottoms and Chesapeake and all its tributaries. It's a shame for all this vacant bottom to be sitting there and not cultivated and put to use.
In field trials with oyster farmers, Allen's triploids grew fast. So fast, they could be harvested well before MSX or germinal could kill moths. Stan Allen finally had an oyster that could feed its needs.
So they're pretty nice oysters. They're highly marketable. Since they're triploid, they're marketable in the summertime. So, these are selectively breeding for a super oyster. It's absolutely the right thing to do to domesticate the species and make it a super oyster to enable aquaculture and commercial investment in the bay. Oyster harvest in the Chesapeake Bay will be aquaculture in the future. I can think of multi-million-dollar industries being based in the bay. All right. I mean, I'm an optimistic person. I paid all my optimism on aquaculture working. Oysters thrive in the bay.
We have two sources of oysters in Delaware Bay. One of them is the wild oyster fishery, and the other is the cultivation of oysters on farms. The oyster industry was decimated in the late 1950s by disease, and Rutgers has been breeding oysters since then to rejuvenate this industry. They have two kinds of oysters here. In addition to the disease-resistant lines, they also produce something called a triploid oyster. The triploid oyster is an invention by Rutgers scientists and also scientists at the Virginia Institute of Marine Sciences. It's sort of like seedless watermelons. But the reason seedless watermelons don't have seeds in them is because they have an extra set of chromosomes. We've been able to produce an oyster that also has an extra set of chromosomes. So it's all oyster DNA. They're not genetically modified organisms. They're safe to eat and they're healthy. They grow just like any other oyster does, but they don't reproduce. So as a result of that, they just continue to grow. And they reach market size quicker. So you have a year-round oyster market now.
About 40 to 50% of the oyster cultured in the US, in France, are triploid using the technology we invented here at Rutgers.
On that beautiful. This is about 2 months old. It will take 18 months to reach market size.
What we're looking at here is called rack and bag culture. There are metal racks out here, and on top of them, we have these mesh bags. These mesh bags are used to hold the oysters off the bottom so they don't get buried in the sand, and also keeps them away from predators. As the water is leaving, you'll see them close up very tightly, and a bit of water will squirt out of the oyster so that they don't dry out when they're exposed to the air. Oysters are really important organisms because they're building up a habitat that allows more organisms to come and grow. And so that's what we call a foundational species. Oysters are all filtering the water. As they filter the water, they're removing the sediments and things that are in the water and improve the environment.
You forget the lemon.
It's a nice experience if you enjoy oysters to eat them at different times of the year and learn how their flavor actually changes because the kinds of things that they're filtering out of the water.
You just eat these and nothing else.
Very good. So it's important to note that the triploid oysters are made with only oyster chromosomes. So it's not really, they're modified, but it's not GMO. It's more like seedless watermelons and bananas and some other fruit that don't have seeds because they've been modified. The rootstock has been modified in the lab. The genetically modified organisms. The first time I heard the term, I was curious about it, and I found that scientists were trying to displace the gene from a frog into a tomato plant. Now that's sort of crossing over quite a bit, but they were doing it to try to get the tomato to have a tougher skin, so it should it lasts longer and on the shelf and shipping. So these are just the oysters are just modified to be sterile so that they grow faster and larger. So only eating oysters in an arm month, why is this? Well, summertime is the breeding time for oysters, so they start losing muscle mass, if you will, and their gonads change. They get larger as they're trying to reproduce, and that changes the texture quite a bit and the taste. But also diseases spread more rapidly in warmer times. So the Alan and Jiming Gao, they getting the oyster to grow faster, and then also a triploid that sort of put it on jet propulsion, if you will. So that was a good answer. So here's just a quick look at the difference between diploids in the summertime and triploids. So, and then back to the Bevins Oyster Company. The shot up at the top of the screen is from, I believe it's 1912. And that I believe it was in Long Island, Little Long Island. And, that's just old shark shells. And down on the bottom two slides or pictures are from the Bevins Oyster Company in Virginia. So it has been a big success. So he's growing his own oysters all over the Chesapeake now. They're doing that, and the shucking. Now they're shucking. It's a much less expensive oyster than buying them from Louisiana or wherever and then having them shipped up. So that's a win for them. So here's a shot of Scudder's Lane, and oyster season there or in Barnstable is November 1st, the first legal day in November. So the legal days to go shellfishing are Sunday, Wednesday, and Saturday. And then the next Sunday starts a new week. So whatever the limit is for the particular species. Now with oysters, you can go out when it starts, you can only get a half a pack of oysters, but you can do that every week. And with so you wouldn't be encountering these bags. That's really aqua farming. The rack and bag stuff. That's where aqua farmers are doing it. But the Department of Natural Resources also does that. And then they scatter them about, not all at once, but they scatter them about. And then the recreational shellfishers can go out and harvest whatever the legal limit is. And when there are enough of them out there, they put out a couple million. But if there's still enough at the end of February and March, they may open it up to like a full pack of oysters because they want to kind of clean them out. They want to clean them out because the oysters will continue to grow. And like you saw in that first video, one was like 2.5 pounds. And I'm thinking that was probably a triploid too, that just keeps eating and eating more. But Scudder Lane is really a place to go, but there's all kinds of shellfish there. It's not just oysters. Well, now I'm going to change over to the problem that we have right here in our own backyard. The 3 bays. The 3 bays are West Bay, North Bay, and Catuit Bay. And they're fed by the Marston's Mills River and various streams. And unfortunately, over the years, there's been a lot of pollution there. And I say that they're really drowning in muck. And the muck is a result of algae and sponges, that are native, but they're being overfed by all of the nitrogen, that is in the water, and the nitrogen comes from, Title V septic systems. It's really our urine, and, also fertilizers and, runoff from, animal waste, as well. But it's really highly concentrated nutrients in there that cause the algae blooms to and the sponges as well. So they multiply, but when they die, they fall to the bottom and they just dissolve into, over time, they dissolve into muck. Now that's one of the things I think most people, if I ask them, they would think that the bottom of the seafloor is probably even. And that may be because the top of the sea is somewhat even. But it's actually the same kind of geography that we have on dry land. They have hills and, and holes. And the problem right now is that the holes are getting filled up with this muck. And a lot of them are full. And so what's happening, the muck is now spreading out, it's going to our beaches, and it's a big threat. So it doesn't happen overnight, but it's been happening for a long time. So a fellow that I know, Jacob Angelo, he was on the Shellfish Committee. And he was allowed by the DNR to do a pilot project to scrape off with the scallop dredger some of the stuff that's on the floor of the here in Prince Cove and Warren Cove, which is just a offshoot. It's by Prince Cove, or Prince Cove Road or Prince Road or whatever. There's a town-way water there. There's a marina, town-run marina. So anyway, he was thinking that this stuff, it could be good for like gardens. Somebody might like it for fertilizer, so we were just trying to add a little bit. But then he had a number of problems. So, but what I want to show, is hang on. This is Patricia Farina. At the time, she was vice president of BARS. And Jake and I went out and I took the videos that you're going to see here on the other screen.
Hi, I'm Patricia Farina, I'm Vice President for BARS, the Barnstable Association for Recreational Shellfishing. And we're out here in Marston's River, over near Katuitt, in Barnstable. And we're with Jacob Angelo, who is a commercial shellfisher for Barnstable. We're going to show you what we're concerned about here on the bottom of the estuary here, and what we're trying to do, and what Jacob's trying to do to clean it up and hopefully maybe present a way forward to help fight all of the nitrogen that is in the water here.
So if you look right here on the shell, you can see that there's pores that the boring sponge has eaten out of it. And in fact, it grows inside the shell, consuming the shell entirely. And then eventually it turns into a mass like this. And when enough of these form in close proximity, they suffocate the bottom. And preventing seed from setting and also compromising the immune systems of the existing plants, which will result in the sponge also being a parasite on living sponges as well, and killing on all living plants as well, and killing the plants while they're alive. Here's a couple baby steamers right here. Found them in the dredge.
And you got a sponge right here.
Yeah, and this is the yellow sponge, and this is what they're competing for. That little tiny steamer is trying to compete on the same bottom. And what ends up happening is they never really find a place to dig in, and then they end up dying.
Now you have a look at what the bottom is on the bottom.
That black stuff, this algae rotting on top of itself year after year after year. And this is no good to show us. Like splitting.
And that's an end result of the nitrogen in the water.
Yeah, this is what happens with all these sponges and algae, growing exponentially on top of each other, and then in the heat of the summer, when all the oxygen gets sucked out of the water, it kills the fish, it kills the algae that cause the problems, everything dies. It all gathers in the low spots, which have become bigger, and now the low spots are filling up more and more, so that the beach that used to know was sandy is now mucky because the muck has nowhere to go.
Right. Well, so maybe they can't look at it.
Which is a fact. Yeah, some of the plans didn't fall out if I got one. So this is, we're in Warren's Cove right now. And this is a big sinkhole for a lot of that, the algae. When it goes down quite a bit. This is nothing but okay. I don't think that is right there.
Yeah, it's at least 4 feet.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to walk it.
It's sick up your chin.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, when I went out with Jake, on that day, I was just appalled, frankly, at how the condition of the sea bottom. Right here in our 3 bays, that's what's on the bottom, and it's not getting worse, so you can.
It's not getting better.
It's good, thank you. I have my editor in chief at the ready. So primarily it's Title V septic systems, and that's why the town is undergoing a big drive to sewer as much of the town as they can, but then there are a lot of remote areas that are, it's totally impractical. So that's where Barnstable Clean Water Coalition, they're advocating, and APCC, they're advocating alternative septic systems that will pull out the nitrogen or most of the nitrogen, so it would be a much better thing, but they're not cheap. You know, all of these points you've already heard Jake talking about, but there really are no easy solutions to this. So that's on to the next part, and this gets more into bars a little bit, but cohogs. That's one of the things that we help the Department of Natural Resources with their propagation. So this is Liz Lewis. At the time this was taken, she was the shellfish technician, the town's shellfish technician. The shellfish biologist retired, and she's got her master's degree now, and she is now the shellfish biologist. So she's the one that we salute. She's a great person, has a wonderful laugh, and she's a lot of fun to be around. And all right, so I don't know how to get back on this one, but anyway, you see, those are bushel baskets, the larger baskets. They just saw over here, it's like a washing basket, you know, a laundry basket. And there are four peck baskets fit into a bushel basket. So I wanted in the back arrow. In the back arrow. All right. Hold on. What we do, I just wanted to describe our part in the quahog propagation. So they have these areas, they call them relay areas. They use them year after year, but they're reserved only for the Department of Natural Resources, so nobody can go there. And what they do is they'll stake out with PVC pipe, like you saw Jake had, And it's roughly a 12 by 15 foot area. So they just put it in the corners and then, the volunteers go and break out what's on the bottom. It could be quahogs, it could be crabs down there, it could be rocks, whatever. We want to get it fairly clean. And then, we go out with, like a 5 gallon bucket that's filled up about a third of the way with, the quahog seed, which is, smaller than, well, it's about the size of your maybe middle finger nail. And we just scatter it about all over the place, within that boundary. And then we put nets over the top, and the nets are plastic, very fine mesh nets. And they have rebar along the edges that are woven into the nets. And then we apply that on top of the seed that we put down. And then there are staples that are, they're metal staples that are about a foot or so. And then we attach it, so let's say this is the rebar that's on the side. So it would put the staple on one tine on each side of the rebar. And we do that every 1.5 2 foot along the entire perimeter, and that holds it down. So it keeps crabs and birds and other predators like moon snails and conch, whelk. We have a couple kinds of whelk here. And anyway, so then those are left to grow for, it takes about 3 years before they get up to legal size. So then after 3 years, we go back in and they have a lot of these all over the place. So it's, we're not waiting for 3 years just to do a dig out, what we call a dig out. So we go for a dig out. We'll take the nets off, collect all of the nets and the staples and all of that and put them off to the side. And then we go in and rake. And I'm telling you, you really have to work your rake to get the tines to go between the quahogs that are down there. It's just so incredibly plentiful that you can dig down. I've gotten well over a dozen in a single, in my basket. So, we sort of skipped through one of the last slides there, but in one day, or on that particular day, we got 24 bushels in 1 hour. And I think there were 24 of us that were out there working. So it's just, that's how plentiful it is. And that wouldn't deplete the whole area. We'd have to go back a couple of times to really get it dug out and you get all the stuff. So the cool thing about this, and this is where it's a great win-win for the recreational shellfishers in town, is that the DNR will take those bags, the bushel baskets of quahogs, and they'll plant them, or they'll scatter them in different areas, like they do at Bridge Street and Osterville. They do a little bit up on the south shore of the Scudder Lane, all around there. There are quahogs there. They're out a little further, but then other places like in Katuitt, in Katuitt at Handy Point, which is very close to the Katuitt Oyster Company on Little River Road. And then up the road a little bit too, on Corwood Avenue. So they have relay areas at both of those places also. So if you do see signage that says shellfishing prohibited here, they're talking about the area that's under nets. So that's closed to public shellfishing because, or for good reason. All right. So another thing that we do is one of our little ceremonies is we have every year the blessing of the rakes. It's a sweet little thing where we get a priest or minister and actually to come and perform the ceremony. And we actually, our new vice president, Mark Norland, is a retired pastor, so he's done the honors the last 2 years. So anyway, they're kind of interesting. So these are just some of the people that showed up for it. And go ahead. I'm thinking you might be passing.
Planners began the quahog season on June 8th with the annual Blessing of the Rakes held at Bridge Street in Osterville.
I don't know who came up with this idea. It's back in early days that a blessing of the race to start the season would be a good occasion to get people together out here on the beach. Just a simple little ceremony and a little, as you can see, show social time together, other than in a meeting format or out shellfishing or out helping the Department of Natural Resources.
The Blessing of the Rakes is organized by the Barnstable Association for Recreational Shellfishing, or BARS. The group was formed in 2001 to promote the welfare, propagation, conservation, and protection of existing shellfish habitats.
Ours is a volunteer organization that was started by a handful of people, some of which are here today at our ceremony of the Blessing of the Rakes, and which sort of kicks off our quahogging season.
Back in the early 2000s, there was a lot of problems that were not being covered, and a few people got together and thought it would be a good idea to have an organization that would support the town in their efforts for conservation and for the shellfish.
Well, I wound up being the first president and one of the original, but the real true guy that started this thing was a chap by the name of Andre Sambu. True friend, absolutely wonderful gang that we got together to start this thing. And the progress that we have made over the years is just phenomenal, phenomenal.
BARS is a very unique organization. We're unique in what we do, in the founding of it. And we've always kind of strived to think about how we react and live together with nature.
Partner with the Department of Natural Resources in Barnstable.
It's a good relationship because we're very helpful to them in providing labor, if you will. And they are good for us because let us know where all the shellfish are.
Quahogs and oysters are more than just delicious treats. These natural filter feeders help remove nitrogen from the water.
They take in the nitrogen and they release it as a gas. So they literally clean the water, and that's amazing. And we just need a lot more of them in order to combat what's coming at us in the ground and going to be coming into our water systems.
BARS members work closely with the town to help protect and maintain this important natural resource.
To help ensure that this recreational sport continues on, because without their efforts and our little help to them, these shellfishing would become non-existent in a short time.
People who are concerned about that, we encourage them to find us, join us, and help us work to try and solve these problems.
And planners say it's a wonderful sport that gets you tasty treats and also very close to Cape Cod's natural beauty.
It's a cultural thing for one. It's a great sport. It's always a great time to be on the water. It's just a lot of fun. It's probably one of the best deals going for the cost of the license for a year. You can get a full pack of quahogs virtually every week.
When you rake and you bring up one of those quahogs, the hard shell, and you hold it in your hand and you see that rich, beautiful purple blue almost, it's just, it's like creation starts right then at the moment. It's just so beautiful. You're out there like on a day like today and you look at the sun and shining on the water and it's good. It's all good.
In Osterville, 4K Media News, I'm Sarah Colvin.
All right. That's about it. I'm still not sure how well we're connected with Zoom and all, but I did want to point out Lee, maybe you would want to show some of the shellfish.
We
the
brought
shells.
some brochures from the Department of Natural Resources. And they cover a variety of different things. This one is about keeping shellfish safe. These are some maps that you can also find online at the DNR website. They change periodically, so it's always a good idea to update them, but they show where you can shellfish, areas that are closed, where oysters or clams are being propagated. This is just a little brochure from the Department of Natural Resources One of the wonderful things that they do is offer, learn to clam classes. And in June, they offered 2 clamming for kids classes, which are really, really fun. Families come, quite frankly, from all over, I mean, you know, Boston even, to work, with volunteers. So bars, that's another activity that bars is with. And this year was really fun. One of the, Liz Lewis, who you saw a photo of, painted one of the clams that they had planted with a bright pink like nail polish. And she said whatever child found that clam would get a rake. And this little like 4-year-old found it. He was so excited. Another thing that we've recently started, the town has recently started, is a program to save your shells. What they do is, there are these large metal bins at Scudder Lane, Bridge Street, Handy Point, Cordwood, and Katuitt Town Dock. And you can put your clam and oyster shells in there. You don't, I mean, we normally clean ours pretty well before we put them in, but you don't really need to. Then they're taken to a special area at the dump and allowed to sit out in the, just outside for a period of, I think it's 1 year. And then they use those shells to, as home, if you will, for the stat that is raised at the, like the ARC up in, is it Dennis?
I believe,
Yeah.
yeah, cool.
So that the clams like to stick to something, and so they use that, and actually other towns have found out that we're doing this and wanted us to, or wanted to buy them. So it's a very, very good resource. This just talks about algal blooms, which unfortunately are becoming more and more common. This is a guide to different types of shellfish that you'll find in Massachusetts. I also wanted to point out this particular brochure has a couple of recipes in it about clam fritters, grilled cohogs, clams casino, and then the bar's clam chowder. So one of the things that we do to help raise money is serve or sell cohog chowder at village festivals. Prior to COVID, there were a lot of village festivals. Now there's pretty much just the West Barnstable Village Festival, the 3rd weekend in September. But we sell our clam chowder there, and it's really good. We don't use flour to thicken it. So one other thing that I don't think John mentioned was that BARS is very actively endorsing efforts for studying marine and environmental science. So we award several scholarships every year to deserving college students who are studying that. So it's a great organization. This is one of our brochures. Again, our chowder recipe is here. And if you're interested at all in joining, it's an easy group and lots of fun.
Yeah, we have monthly meetings. It's the first Tuesday of the month from January.
Well,
Yeah.
there are some months we don't.
Yeah, right. Like December, we usually have a holiday party. And then July, we're working at the shed, and we also have a float and the Barnstable Village 4th of July parade. So that's fun. We won first prize again.
I'm curious, has everyone here been out shellfishing? No, oh, so some new people, great.
Oh, it's just the best. I mean, you're out there, hip deep or knee deep in the water, and you're getting some good stuff to eat, and it's just a wonderful time. It's a very bucolic. Just don't go out when it's stormy. But one tip I'll give you is to go out to a place, and you should go out a little bit early, like an hour before low tide. Now, the town has tide charts, but if you haven't, like an iPhone or a smartphone, you can get a tide app, and you can kind of plan on where you want to go. The tides are different on the North Shore, like at Scudder Lane, and the Barnstable Harbor up there. It has 9 to 12 foot tides. And so when they go out, the beach expands like by 100 feet or more. And it's quite remarkable, but then it comes in and there's not much beach there at all at high tide. And you can go on Google Maps and look at Barnstable Harbor, and you can see some of the oyster, the aqua farmers out there, the grants that they have. And you can, mostly they're using the rack and bag method. And but you can see how much is out there. It is quite impressive. So those are private grants. The town owns the land, and they sell the grants, or they rent them, if you will, to the aqua farmers. And but there's a lot of the area around there that's just open for recreational shellfishing. And up there, there are steamers, meaning the soft shell clams, quahogs, and also one that we don't have a shell of, but the razor clams. And one of the coolest things about getting razor clams, they'll scoop down, they'll dig away, you almost can't dig them out by hand or with a rake like that. But a technique that Liz showed us, and you go out there, you may see a lot of people with like a garden sprayer, a tank. So they make a super saturated salt solution, and then they pump it up, and then they go over to where a razor clam has 2 siphons, and so it has holes at the sand level, all right, that sort of look like a figure 8. So there are 2 of them. That's pretty small, but still. So they put the nozzle of the sprayer and just squirt some of the super saturated salt solution, and then within maybe a minute, they're all ticked off, and they come up. They come up and look at what happened here, and you can just go and pick them up. But you have to be careful, they're very fragile, so because you can take them apart. You don't want to do that, but anyway. But yeah, so that's up there as well. And I think you can have a full basket of those every month. It's become more and more popular. So anyway, questions, anybody? Yes.
Yeah, what's the status of the sewer project timeline?
Good question. I'm not really up on that. I'd have to defer you to what the town is, but they started off with a 30-year plan that they just kicked off. And I don't know, Z Crocker, who is the executive director of Big Rig, he said that's not acceptable. And yeah, so there's some legal pressure to up the schedule. But yeah, but some of them, like when they brought the electric through to Craigsville Beach, Craigsville, no, Cobbles Beach. They partnered with the town partnered with the electric people, because they had to rip the road up all the way from there to get up to the main lines that's up by Annex Lane in Hyannis. So they said, well, we want to put sewers in, so that's what they ended up doing. So because they had the road open, all right, so that sewer line was that was brought in there, which will eventually feed a lot of other areas, but that main line was done at a very large cost saving, because the town didn't have to spend money to bust the road open and then cover it back over. So that was really good. And I know that Dowses Beach, and it's a touchy thing, but our energy needs aren't going to diminish. So stay tuned. Go to meetings, whatever, get informed, find out what's going on, but I would have to defer you to the town website. Has a ton of information. There are a lot of different what are they? Just the departments. They've got departments for everything, and there's a ton of information. And feel free to get it. Anybody else? Go. Ladies first.
Can you go over the size thing?
Sure. What do I do with it?
It's over here. So it's always good to measure anything that you think is doubtful. So if you were, this is how you measure clam. If it falls through, it's too little, otherwise it's fine. We don't have an oyster here, but you would place the oyster like this. And this would be short.
Okay.
It has to come down to here at least.
And this is a soft shell clam. It's the shell. And I believe that's, the inside opening is 2 inches, and this is, this is greater than that. So it will do oyster, cohogs this way, and then this way, just the inside is 2 inches.
Thank you.
Other shellfish that we haven't talked about, and you may see a lot of them around, the horseshoe crabs, and I'm going to try to do a better job of getting on PowerPoint, but I'll be giving a talk about the horseshoe crabs. But you can see hundreds of these at various times on the beaches. These aren't dead horseshoe crabs. They molt. They molt just like lobsters molt, shrimp molts, all they end up doing that. But these are sandy.
Sand.
They're just like the beach. So, and then there are a conch or a whelk. And these are hunted as well, and fished for. There's conch fritters. Anyone? Not necessarily my thing, but. But then there are different sizes to the cohogs too. And this, I think, is a little neck. It's so named not because of its size, but from Little Neck, Long Island. It was very plentiful, and that was the size that they typically got. There are cherry stones, top necks, little necks. This is what you would call a chowder clam or chowder quahog, or full quahog. And they get much bigger than this. I just call them ashtrays. And what Patricia was talking about was the purple inside, the quahog shells. And this was the Native Americans used it for currency. They made wampum, they made beads out of it. And there's a fellow on Wampanoag shells, Marcus Hendricks, thank you. Who's an artist, and he's a full-blooded Native American from the Wampanoag tribe, and then they put weapons in Maine. So this is a surf or sea clam or whatever. It's a different animal than the quahog. All right, it's a totally different thing. It looks more like the soft shell clam, kind of. But anyway, if you read Thoreau's Cape Cod, there's a chapter in Thoreau's Cape Cod about the Wellfleet fishermen, and that giant clam is the clam that is talked about in there. And it's probably the only, maybe the funniest thing that Thoreau ever wrote. But it just I'll leave it at that. But maybe you'll be curious enough to check it out. But it's very it was fun. And the Barnstable Land Trust last year at Fuller Farm, it's on Route 149. You may know where it is or whatever, but we had a readathon for Thoreau's Cape Cod. It went on over for a weekend. It was a Saturday and a Sunday. And we had a variety of readers that read from the book, and we read through the whole story. So it was a lot of fun. Okay.
How do you learn about proper handling of the shellfish once you catch it? I get you go out with the rake and you scoop up whatever you come up with, I suppose, right? But how do you put it in water and let it rinse? Or some people scrub them.
Yeah, well, all right, cohogs and soft shell clams are and razor clams too. They dig into the sand. Oysters don't. Putting oysters out, it's like planting rocks. They don't move. You just go, and they're sitting on the surface pretty much, especially after they've, gone through they're just tossed out there, but they don't move. But the clams do, they'll dig down and they'll, as part of their eating process through their siphons, they'll be picking up sand as well as nutrients and everything, but they'll eject the sand somewhat. But because they are buried in sand, they need to be scrubbed, and we have a pretty stiff bristled brush that we, rinse underwater, just to get the sand off. And what we do, the oysters and the cohogs and whatnot that you get, they don't go through a depuration process. So we don't put them in, filtered water or whatever. So what we do, and we've had pretty good luck with it, but some people disagree. They don't think it's a way to do it. But we'll get like a gallon or two of seawater from the area. And then we'll bring them home, we'll rinse them down just with fresh water. You don't want to put them in fresh water. You can rinse them off, get most of the gunk off them. And then we typically put them in for at least an hour, if not maybe overnight, because usually we're getting back later in the day. And the next morning you'll pull them out and then maybe scrub them down with a brush or whatever to get the sand off. But then a way to keep them is just put them in the refrigerator, like in a plastic tub, not a metal tub, but a plastic tub. And put a wet rag over, just a slightly, a damp wet rag. And that'll keep them from drying out. And they'll last in your refrigerator for a pretty good time. And if you want to save them for later, you can freeze them. You can either shuck them. Nice way to shuck them is maybe put them in the freezer for 5-10 minutes, and then it's an easier shuck for cohogs anyway. Or you can just steam them up and harvest the meat, and then put it in, we have a little vacuum bag set up, and then put them in the freezer. They're good for a long time. One of the things that I was kind of shocked by, actually, when we took the aqua farming class out of the Cape Cod Cooperative Extension, was that these aqua farmers, and this goes way back, way back, in the wintertime, they'll haul their animals. That's what they call them. They are animals. So they'll take their animals out and they'll put them in like a barn on racks with burlap over, or they put them in pits that are dug underground like a root cellar, and they'll put them there and they'll winter over. They'll be there for the whole winter. And yeah, there is some mortality to them, but the reason that they do that is if they have bags and equipment out in the harbor, and then you get a big storm, they could lose not only the oysters or whatever they're growing out there. They could lose their animals, but they can lose all their equipment as well. So an ice flow, especially in Barnstable Harbor, that tidal flow, it's a 9 to 12 foot tide, and if you get a storm surge or whatever, and if there's ice out there, it can just decimate everything, and farmers can lose a lot, and it's the equipment isn't exactly cheap. But that was one of the things that I found pretty impressive. But if you think about it, you think the Stop and Shop gets new oysters every day? Or what do they do with the ones at the end of the night? They're not rotating that, they're leaving it, under, yeah. So, it's not just Stop and Shop, but, all of the fish stores and everything, but they know how to handle it. But they keep them cool. And the thing is, when they're cold, in the cold, they hibernate. So they've gone to sleep. So anyway, you had a question too?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it. I learned so much. It was kind of depressing, so sad that, the water's in such a state.
Me too.
Yeah. But so to learn how to shellfish, to actually go do it, this is the best resource?
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think there's a class every month during the summer. If you go to the Department of Natural Resources website, and look under a shellfishing link. I believe that, they're posted there.
Is that the state's Department of Natural Resources? or-
No,
The town, it's Barnstable, Township.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes,
So there is, because you mentioned something in June that was for children.
Right.
But if you wanted to learn now and not wait till next
Right.
year.
yeah,
Okay, so this
Well,
is the way to go.
You could reach out to us too at the shellfishing.org. There is a contact us, a form on there. And you can,
we have a couple of people who are happy to take out here.
Right.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
yeah, Yeah.
Oh, great.
And quite frankly, there's really not that much to it.
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing is, getting the equipment, getting the right equipment. You don't want to go out and buy a lot of equipment, but what's nice about the cohogs, you go out in your swimsuit and water shoes, you have to wear something on your feet unless you got really thick soled feet. Because there are rocks out there, there are little crabs out there, and all sorts of stuff. So, yeah, and Mars helps out with the teaching classes, especially with the little kids, but we used to have our own shellfishing classes, and we could probably do that again. I would have to talk with Liz and try to coordinate that. Because we would want to overlap, yeah. Yes.
I just had a quick question, and you might have covered this, so I apologize. But there are distinct seasons, shellfishing, like oysters seem to be.
Yep.
October to, I don't know, March 1st. Is that true for all of these different types of?
No, it's open season year round for the other shellfish. But oysters is rather special. And it starts the first legal day in November. And it usually will run through the end of March. It could go longer too, depending on how many are left there.
In your shellfishing license that you get from Natural Resources, covers all the shellfish.
Yes, right. So the one license, and they changed it. It's now, January 1st. Well, by the 15th, you need to have your new license. So it's going more to the calendar year. It used to be, I think, from March to March, something like that. Yeah. But now, and information about that is on the website, but it's good. That's good for the whole year. Yeah. And it's a great deal. It's absolutely a great deal. And I'm saying this, I haven't even been out yet this year. There's too many other things going on.
You would need some pretty serious waders to be out looking for oysters.
Oh, yeah, in the wintertime, if you go out if you're going for oysters, yeah, waders are really mandatory. And if anybody's interested in we have some other, these are our personal breaks here, but we do have some equipment that people have donated, as people retire out or they pass along or whatever, we inherited their stuff. So a place to go for equipment, if you want to just look at it more up close, is the sports port. There are a couple other places around, but we're friendly with them. It's a nice little operation right on. Is it South Main or South Main and Hyannis? Yeah, it's Amy runs it. All right. One more.
I hear people are getting scallops down at Callis.
Scallops are, they're their own little thing. They're bay scallops. It's not the sea scallops. It's the little guys. And you can go around there and see the shells. They are around, and that's a legal thing to get. But you need to be this gauge doesn't work for those necessarily. And I've never gone for them. I know that they dart around. They're quick movers. So that's one of the reasons why it's a very hard thing to grow by an aqua farmer, because they want to get away, and they're little, they have tiny mesh nets or whatever, and they grow fast and whatnot. But the gauge on those is a little different. It's like a growth ring. So I think it has to have like 2 growth rings to be legal. So it may not be a strict measure of, its length or thickness, But they are out there, but one of the things too, talk about the habitat. We went over the 3 days pretty much, but there used to be scallops in there. There used to be eelgrass in there. But the eelgrass is gone with the muck and everything. And the eelgrass was subtidal grass for the most part. But that's where the scallops like to live. They felt comfortable in that, some sort of protection. And when that went, it's like they got fished out or whatever, and they're not coming back without that. So I guess there's still some eelgrass over in around Hyannis Harbor and Kelmis Beach, yeah. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.